Yes. Okay, so I think this is how you record. Uh, yeah. Hello, Rasmus.
Hey,
Um, how is it going for you? I
it's
know.
going fine.
Yeah. Uh, Beautiful day outside. The winter has
hmm
come. The
hmm
winter air is here. And I have a couple of interesting, for me, there are interesting questions about board games because I know that you are a board game enthusiast.
hmm
So first of all, could you tell us or me about your age and occupation?
Yeah, I'm 43 and I'm in IT. Right now, I'm between jobs, but that's a different story. But in general, it's whenever I work, it's an IT, being a programmer, being a Scrum Master, so leading projects and coding a bit myself, less and less now.
Okay. And can you tell us about your hobbies? What do you do in your spare time? Any?
Yeah, board gaming is definitely one of them, one of the biggest one. But beyond that, it's running and fitness in general, biking, Legos, TV and movies, all the nerd stuff.
Oh, that's interesting. Uh, because you mentioned board games, and this is the topic of what we
Yeah,
are discussing now. Can you tell me a number, approximately, of course, how often do you play board games?
I when you asked me for this, I probably expected this question. So I'm torn between it's either one time a week or once every 2 weeks. It's roughly between one of those, depending on
Okay, we can say
schedules and stuff.
once every 10 days or something like that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
something like that.
okay. Um, And what are your favorite board games? You can name specific board games, or you can name just genres of board game.
There's a lot of board games, of course, and I have many different titles. I can even give you a link to my Board Game Geek collection where all of them are rated. So if you want the top 10, you can get that. But I have a few very high in my regards. One is called Twilight Imperium, which is a kind of space war game. It's what is called a 4X game, where you explore, exploit, so on, do research and stuff. Another genre is story-driven games, something called time stories that I know you know.
Yes.
Um, but in general, there's a lot of games. But lately, it's actually more where there is a unique experience because there's so many worker placement games or so many war games and so on. But the games that actually can give a unique experience, either with a story or being app driven or being a big experience, being a long game, that's the favorites. But it's not
Okay.
like I
That
can go in and say again. You can get my full list if you wish.
yeah. But because you play so many board games, probably you
Mm,
have a lot of different favorite ones and from different genres, and you can
yeah.
kind of already answered what do you like about them. It's kind of my next question, but
Mm,
you answered maybe you can elaborate on that a bit more.
yeah, yeah. The genre of a game doesn't matter too much. I tend to like space, sci-fi and space in general, so that helps with a game. But one of the big things is player interaction. Is a huge that automatically gives a plus in a game in my book. Little downtime in a game. There's nothing more boring than sitting in a game and waiting for 10 minutes to do your turn, and then you do something for 1 minute, and then you wait 10 minutes again, and so on. So that is often something with simultaneous turns where everyone can do something at the same time, or whatever the other player is doing is actually important for you to actually pay attention to. Many people, or many Euro games, or German games as they're called, are more or less solitaire. You could sit together in a room, you're playing a game together, but essentially you're just playing your own board with your own optimization. And yeah, perhaps if you are really, really into winning, you should pay attention to the other people, but it actually doesn't have to modify. So it is the interaction in a game that is the fun part. Co-op games is also fun, where you either win or lose together. So that's the main things. It also needs to be very elegant. It's so annoying sitting and reading up a lot of rules all the time. It should be a game that just flows. And the games I mentioned fit some of those boxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You also described what annoys you in most of board games. I'll just reiterate what you said is the downtime, where you basically have to wait for another player to do something, and you cannot do something before other player is finished, right? And this is an annoying part that you find in board games. And the other one that you mentioned, complicated rules or a lot of rules, so that you have to spend a lot of time actually figuring out how to play the game.
Actually, the figuring out how to play the game is not the problematic one. It's the one where you actually sit in the middle of the game. You have learned all the rules, and you still need to check certain things in the rule book all the time. You just feel when you play a game if it's elegant. Is my best way of describing it. So it doesn't matter that a game actually have a lot of rules. If you are into it, so that's not as such a negative, just because a game can be very complex and still be very, very good. Of course, it will take a little time to get into, and I tend to always read up on rules that beforehand, or see a video about a game, so I'm more prepared. So at least one or two people know the rules. So rules is not such a negative, or complexity is not as negative. But there's a point where it comes to, I call them, this becomes work now. It's let me sit down and do this math equation to say, if I do this, I get 2 points. If I do this, I get 3 points. But that's also because if people play that way, the downtime increases a lot. So being a solitaire game, meaning you just sit and play around a table, but actually not playing with the other people other than the social aspect of it, and downtime because of either it just takes a long time to play around, or someone is really trying to min-max everything in a game.
Yeah. And when you encountered those issues or annoying things that you just mentioned, have you ever tried to solve this, where you thought that this is a problem, where the group with whom you played also thought that this is a problem? Have you ever tried to just fix something that you find annoying in a board game?
Yes, it's what we call house rules in the hobby. Of course, we have done a few, but often it's more we play the game as intended, and then criticize it afterwards, more or less, and think about, could we do something different, and so on. But and to the games we then play again and again, we might make up house rules saying this rule doesn't apply, we do it like this instead because it's more fun that way. But there's this thing about board gaming nerds like me and others, is we tend to not play the same games again and again and again, because so many new games comes out. There's like 10,000 new games every year. In that regard, it will just be a game that only get one chance. It really needs to be a very, very high, good experience with a few negatives. Else, there's just so many other games that you can play instead of trying to fix a slightly bad game.
Yeah. And just you just mentioned it, the fact that you were switching between board games, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if is it the correct term to say that, but what's the lifetime of a board game for you? Like for how long do you play it until you don't want to play it anymore?
Well, there's everything from games I've tried once to games I've tried like 50 times. So, but I'm just looking at my list on my other screen here. I've tried like 250 different games. So there's a lot of trial, and it's a bit sad for the gaming industry that you buy a game and then you only play it once or twice. But that's a thing of the community right now, that people always want to try new games all the time. There's a few gaming groups I know that stay to one game and they really become good at it, and that can also be a fun experience to do it that way. But there is this skew towards try a game once or twice, and so I said 250 games played, and the average play is probably under three, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest, unfortunately.
I see.
Um, but different game groups, different ways of doing it. I know another game group that have a game they've played all the time, and they're really, really good at that instead. So
But what you mentioned is that you play the game twice or three times, and then you want to try a new game. Can have I know there's such thing as expansions for board games.
hmm
Have this concept have it made you replay the game? Uh,
yeah, again, this is I have changed my mind of expansions over the years, because you really, really need to play a game many times before an expansion is needed often. It's very, very rare that an expansion fixes a game. Most times expansions add more players or add a few different things, but often we have a game, we have the expansion, but we actually play it without the expansion because there's a new player that haven't tried it before. You should never really play with an expansion first time around. So I tend to try to play as the game was intended originally, unless it's a game where I'm really, really playing it a lot. The few things I do that a lot, then it becomes fun to add the expansions because that gives new life to a game. But because I'm only playing games like 2 or 3 times, I have not really explored the base game often, so the expansion is not needed.
yeah, I see. And you mentioned the board game geek a couple of times.
Yeah,
It,
BDG.
yeah, is it your go-to place of exploring new board games and getting reviews?
Board Game Beam is more to look up when someone says a name of a game or rate them, or to me, finding new games is more YouTube. There's various YouTube channels that go in and review games. Kickstarter is another place, but I'm trying to not go to Kickstarter as much because it's a sucky place, to be honest. But so it's primarily YouTube, because to me a game I need to see it in action. I need to see someone set up the board, to try it out, and such things before I can evaluate if I think a game would be good or bad. A few times I go and read the rules. You can often find the rules of all board games as PDFs online and read up on a rule, but it is 90% YouTube.
Okay. And I have one last question, actually.
Yeah.
It might be odd that it's at the end of the interview, but I thought that while talking about board games, the answer to this question might change. The question is, why do you play board games?
Why? Um,
What what
yeah,
makes
yeah, yeah,
you?
yeah. I'm trying to formulate. First of all, I wouldn't play board games if it wasn't fun. It's to me, it's almost movie 2.0. It's have an experience with other people, but you are actually part of it and not just sitting together and watching at the same screen. Or so it's a really fun activity to do together, where you actually are involved in things. It's not because I don't play to win. Win is a bonus, but you could have an entire board game weekend or day or whatever however you set it up, not even win a single time, but you still had fun. And it's the conversations between the games and stuff that also make it's just a social activity where you don't just sit and watch a screen together, instead of where you actually do stuff. And the mechanics of games has always been fun. I played computer games a lot as well. So that's the main reason. But the social part is because, for example, now and during Corona and stuff, you could actually play board games via something called Tabletop Simulator, where you actually had a virtual board and stuff, and it's simply not the same. So it is the social interaction part of it that brings it home.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised that you said that board games are a movie 2.0, where most of the people find it like a video game, an
You can
alternative
also
to.
say video game 2.0 or 0.5, because sometimes when you play a board game, you actually sit down and say, okay, one of these games where there's too much fiddling around with things, where it could actually be better as a multiplayer computer game. So sometimes it goes both direction, actually.
Mhm.
Um, and I actually know people who say, this is a good board game, but I only play it as the computer version because it takes care of all the calculations of points and stuff and so on. So there's a trend where the computer games actually goes into that direction. But that is when you're remote. You don't sit down like old LAN parties where you sit. So there is the human part of it. But it's more that just meeting up and seeing a movie together. Yeah, you sit down for 2 hours, don't talk, and then you talk after the fact, and before and so on. So it's just a more interactive social experience together with people.
Yeah. Well, I got some very nice feedback and interesting answers to my
Mm.
questions, and I think that's about it.
Yeah.
If you have anything else to add, maybe you find something important mentioning that I didn't ask you about. Um, Otherwise,
Mm, no, not really. It was your questions. I can't.
no, no, I know,
Uh,
I know.
yeah.
Maybe you just wanted to mention something, and I just asked the question, and then you didn't have time to say that, but
No,
that's
no.
fine.
You gave me all the time I needed.
Yeah. Uh, well, thanks a lot for your
Yeah,
time
no problem. No
and for
problem.
your input. This is very much appreciated, and
Mm.
hopefully this will make us try to understand the board game users,
Mm.
what they find in a board game, what makes them play a board game but not something else, and what are the pains of the users. Let's
Yeah,
say it
and
this way.
but of course, remember that every board gamer is different. Many people go for the social, but there is some people, the alpha gamers as they are called. They it's only about winning, and
Okay,
they are essentially not fun to play with, to be honest.
the
Sometimes
competitive board
too
gamers.
competitive can happen in this
Yeah,
genre, like any other thing.
yeah, yeah, of course. Well, thank you again,
Yeah,
and
thank you.
I think that was it.
Yeah.
I'll